I would just note that I was very pleased to have a chance to visit briefly with the 4-H members that joined the committee and watched some of the proceedings here earlier today, and just to compliment them and to make sure that that is in fact on the record, Chair, and especially how valuable of an organization 4-H is across Canada, and how they are building the leaders of today that I have no doubt will take their seats around tables like this and in the House of Commons in the future. And just to note, as I mentioned to the 4-H students before, those impromptu and prepared speeches, that 4-H is exceptionally good, and those who have been through 4-H understand the 4-H public speaking. They're great preparation for things like member statements, question periods, and committee interventions. So kudos to everybody who is in Ottawa this week for 4-H. And some of the advocacy they're doing on behalf of that organization, and some of the real frustration about the cuts, actually, that the Liberals have made to that organization. I would, however, like to jump into the substance of what has been being discussed here. And it's interesting because there are the two very important items. One, of course, as Mr. Viersen had been talking about, we have the auto theft issue. And I will just take a brief moment, if I could, to talk about a story that a constituent shared with me. And
actually, Mr. Kirk, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just thought it might be helpful to bring us to remind the committee on the motion that's before us. The motion before us is Mr. Genes's amendment to the subcommittee report, and as long as everyone in the room is kind of aware of that.
Absolutely.
I'll give the floor back to you, Mr. Kirk.
And very, very glad that that you're ensuring that there is relevance to the subject at hand, because absolutely, and as it is clearly laid out in the motion that is before the committee, a very clear connection to the impacts that Canadians are feeling about things like auto theft. And I would note one of the stories that was shared with me, and because it has particular relevance, because quite often I think, and politicians gain this reputation of being disconnected from the people. Disconnected from the people. It's a troubling trend that leads to, I think, mistrust in not only politicians but our institutions, and that's why I'd like to share something that has pertinent and clear relevance to the subject at hand, and that is the fact, Chair, that I heard from a constituent the other day.
I'm sorry, did
about
I
the instance of
point of order, which I think Mr. Genuis won't.
Sorry, Mr. Biddle, on a point of order. Go ahead.
Mr. Kirk is leaning into his mic and just popped one of his peas. This is as you can. Mr. Kirk, like me, volume isn't his issue. He can just sit back a little bit and doesn't need to lean in the mics. And
perish the popping of peas, please. Please. Maybe if you can move the mic a little bit away.
I've adjusted the microphone, Chair, and I do I'll take this opportunity to thank our interpreters. I know that although often they sit in a separate room through glass, I know I and my colleagues certainly appreciate the work that they do, and happy to make sure that I try not to pop peas. But as a farmer, when we talk about peas, we talk about them generally by the bushel. So that's maybe a little bit different than the popping of peas in the circumstance of committee intervention. But Chair, I would like to get back to the story that I was about to share, and it is that a local business has a shop on the edge of one of the communities that I represent. I won't get too specific because not only is there an ongoing investigation, but just out of respect of the victims, they had what was clearly a organized, very well timed break-in. Had about $130,000 worth of equipment stolen just a few days ago. And as I was having this conversation on Monday, actually, as that was Victoria Day, so I had the chance to be in the constituency for most of that day before heading to the airport. Hearing from this individual, small business owner, works hard to provide for his family, for for his son, who is a partner in the business, and the other employees that work for him. The devastating impacts that this $130,000 in stolen equipment has on his ability to operate. And the fact that he and the community to which was impacted, they have lost trust in the ability for the justice system, or as many constituents remind me on a regular basis, that we don't seem to have a justice system in our country anymore. Rather, just a legal system that does not serve the cause of justice. Because whether it is small business owners, like the story that I'm referring to, where $130,000, now that may not seem like a huge number to people that sit around this table chair, but a small business owner losing $130,000 worth of equipment and then having to make the decision about whether to make an insurance claim because of the possibility that insurance will go up to a point where it's unaffordable and may even get to the point where they will not offer coverage any longer. That has a devastating impact on not only that family's life, but the families of everybody involved in that small business. The trust that has been broken in our institutions because of the failure of our system to respond to such an egregious incident as this. And this was about 2 trucks and some tools stolen. So this was not a huge heist, but it was well planned, it was well orchestrated. By the time the security system had alerted both law enforcement and the business's proprietor, they were long gone. And it is, they're looking into a hopeless prospect about anything being done about that. So, Chair, the reason why I share that story is because it lays a close connection to the answers that I believe that all Canadians demand and deserve when it comes to the troubling rise in auto theft. This is not an isolated incident. This is something that is a story that I know my Conservative colleagues and I hear on a regular basis. And to hear commentary from other parties in the House of Commons dismissing the seriousness of this matter, Chair, it is incredibly discouraging to Canadians that expect a justice system to serve the best interests of our country. And it is further it is discouraging for so many Canadians when they see that there is simply no ability for the system to actually put these perpetrators behind bars, because not only is it a victimless crime, as has been suggested by commentators, it has a significant impact on victims, their families, the communities in which they live, and the consequences are great. It has a reduction in productivity. Significant reduction in productivity, whether it's for that small business owner, the customers to which he is working hard to serve, the community in which they operate, or how that is amplified over the national conversation around the diminished productivity in our country. It is time that we rebalance the scales to ensure that justice can actually be served in this country. Because right now, you ask most Canadians, and while there are Liberals that would make grand proclamations, it's certainly the lack of trust that exists in the system as a whole, including for those, as we've heard often, stories about, and I know my colleague Mr. Caputo, Mr. Viersen, and Mr. Genuis, and I know other colleagues have talked at length about this. It is not simply the process to which a conviction can be brought, because there is the burden of proof. There's the whole process to which is fundamental to the rights and the rights of Canadians. But it is often those who have been found guilty of crimes that do not face the justice that certainly Canadians expect. And the consequences of that as victims are not, they don't feel, they aren't able to live, they aren't able to run their businesses. There's been this breakdown, this societal breakdown that results from that. We hear that when it comes to the most egregious examples of some of the worst perpetrators, mass murderers in Canadian history when it comes to their prison classification. That's not a laughing matter, as is so often suggested by the left-leaning political establishment in this country. That's serious. Those victims matter. But it goes down the entire system where you have the egregious mass murderers all the way down to those who, in some cases, Chair, and this might be hard to believe for some people listening, but there are instances where you'll have serious property crimes, you know, vehicles stolen, break-ins, where in rural areas of this country, the police are not even able to respond. Not even able to respond. That a phone call is the only response that they get. And I don't blame our hardworking men and women in uniform. In fact, I speak to many of them on a regular basis because those who are in law enforcement have a tough job. And to hear the stories of how demoralizing it is for a police officer, in some cases to spend hundreds of hours building a case, and for that to be simply tossed out or pled out on a lesser charge. Or if a conviction, in the rare case where it is granted, when a conviction is made, for that individual in some cases to be back out on the street in no time at all. It has led to there's no wonder that why morale in our nation's police forces has taken such a hit under the soft on crime, hug a thug policies of this NDP Liberal government. So I want to highlight that. But Chair, and I may get back to that because there's certainly a lot more that needs to be said on that matter. But I do want to also talk about some of the circumstances surrounding the correction system in Canada and how it seems like the government is so intent to not see accountability in that system. What is unique, in fact, I find it really ironic, Chair, that the Liberals often level the political criticism that Conservatives are playing American-style politics. They make that accusation often. Yet I'd like to highlight how what is a fascinating exploration of that is that Conservatives actually have a great deal of respect for the unique aspects of what our Westminster parliamentary system is. And that includes assuring that executive government is engaged in the legislative aspects of how our government functions. Now, that is distinct from the way that the American system works. That is a distinct difference between where you have a separate executive and legislative in the United States. In Canada, there's a far closer connection, although there's a significant amount of overlap, and I won't get into what is a extended discussion about some of the history that has led to that. Canada's executive branch of government is closely connected to our legislative branch. Yet it is the Liberals, in particular, but with the support of the NDP, that seem to be quick to suggest that that there should not be legislative oversight, that there should not be, in many cases, executive oversight, but in this case, I want to particularly focus on the legislative oversight, that there should not be that oversight upon the happenings of government. And I would make a point here. It is often forgotten by my left-leaning political friends across the aisle that government is subject to Parliament. It's not the other way around. Parliaments come and go, yes. We have every 4 or so years, sometimes less. Certainly in the case of this current Parliament, I'd certainly, and I know my constituents certainly wanted to see it shorter than 4 years. But it is, as is laid out in every act that is passed by Parliament, government is a creation of Parliament. Parliament is supreme. And it is that fundamental principle that is so often forgotten by the Liberals, and we see that clearly the case in the conversation around corrections. And let me highlight to you why that is the height of irony. We have heard extensively throughout the conversation about whether it be Canada's most egregious murderers, whether it be the stories that I hear as a representative of a federal institution, the Drumheller Penitentiary, or speaking to union whether it be speaking with others who have had interactions with the justice system, whether it be when I had a chance to tour my local institution. Chair, there has to be that oversight. There has to be. And if there is not, it is an abdication of the responsibility of the very basis of our system. And we have seen that over the last 9 or so years. And the result is that Canadians look at the system, the justice system in general, of which the correctional system is a key part of that. It is a key part of that. There has been a significant erosion of trust in that. And I would just note, Chair, this is not simply from a one-sided discussion. Chair,
Mr. Keurig, to the endless disappointment of the committee, I think we're going to have to...
I'm sure.
We have run out of resources, and we're going to have to pull the plug